fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests. I finished this speech 14 days ago, and then I finished it again 13 days ago, and then I finished it again 12 days ago. I did this over and over every day until about an hour before I got here. The reason was because I didn't know which details to include about myself and which to exclude about myself. I didn't want to elicit anyone's pity, but of course, I wanted to be acknowledged for everything I've overcome. So, as I kept going through rewriting the speech over and over, before you knew it or I knew it, the speech started becoming about the speech itself rather than about me. But that tells you a little bit about who I am. In order to tell you who I am, which is a very loaded question philosophically, and if you live moment to moment, it changes moment to moment. So how do you even answer that? I thought the best way to go about it was to tell you how this incredibly humble person came before you today. My parents are Armenian. They lived in Iran. They were there because of the Armenian genocide. They went there as refugees. They grew up very poor because they had to leave everything behind. And just about 8 years before I was born, the Muslim Revolution of 1979 happened in Iran. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with history, can you guess what year the Muslim Revolution of 1979 happened? So the year afterwards, in 1980, they had what's called the Cultural Revolution. This means they went through all their schools and got rid of everybody that wasn't Muslim or fit into the culture, basically. So they kicked my dad out of the university and forced him to join the military. And at that time, the Iran-Iraq war had started, so he had to serve 2 years there, and then went back home to my mother, whose life options had become housewife. About a year later after that, I was born, and they had applied for asylum, to which we came over to the United States by going to Austria, and then to Germany, and then to Sweden, and then we came to Glendale. So, journey. By the time I was 5 years old, I had known 5 different homes. Growing up here, because my parents had known basically a violent culture growing up, and they had kids themselves when they were still kids, we had a pretty violent household. My father was really good at going to jail for domestic abuse. So we went to a few different households because my parents would split up, get back together. And of course, this to me was like, I didn't feel like any place was home. Everybody was just passing through in my life. So this led to not developing connections with people over time, doing terribly at school. I felt the same exact way. A lot of it because I was acting out. And then there's times between me being 13 years old until about 27 that we won't really talk about right now because that's a big conversation. But today, great times, I'm actually becoming promoted to lead engineer at a software development company. The reason why I got this job is because one of my girlfriends yelled at me for watching too much Star Trek. I didn't know there was such a thing as too much Star Trek. But apparently when you can just watch the episodes and know the next lines, terrible time. So she convinced me to start learning things about programming, which I thought, okay, this is pretty easy, we can do this. But I knew absolutely nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. There's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you think you know something, and you're like, oh shit, I was wrong, excuse my language. And then luckily, I was invited to do IT, which I've been doing a very long time, while they taught me. And my whole life is work right now, so I'm trying to connect more with people and get used to talking to people, which is why I'm here today. why have you not raised that green thing up yet? I've been rambling, so thank you.
Excellent. Wow. What a speech. Yeah. What a great speech.
That was amazing.
That was amazing.
We should explain that's an icebreaker.
Yeah, that's the icebreaker instead of regular speech.